Alright, should be live. Just trying to see if I can find some last minute stories to add to this whole thing, but there's not much, I don't think, to further discuss. This should really be... Oops, that is not what I wanted to click on. Don't need that. So it's not going to be a long stream today, not too much I want to discuss. I did think it was worth discussing the peace plans. Let's play the intro music first, actually. Sorry guys, I completely forgot I had more one to cover. I guess we're out of time. There was one more article I wanted, so if you guys bear with me a second, as I try and find it. There was something about Rachel Reeves not wanting to blame governments of the past, and it was in the Telegraph recently. But I can't seem to find it. Yeah, I'm just trying to see. Can find it. This is the last thing I need. So I was trying to find stuff on the peace plan because I thought it was worth discussing, but because I thought that's quite interesting. I haven't seen a lot of discussion on it. Then I got sidetracked with something else. Looking to get a poncho. There's a specific poncho I want, but I can't find it anywhere. So, but that's not important right now. I'm doing what I accuse others of is rambling. This article is from, wow. They love writing behind paywalls. I don't get why they do that. They love it so much. But anyways, let's get on to the actual topics. Are the 3D printers behind you? No, they are not 3D printers. Those are cube shelves. Does it look like 3D printers? Those are cube shelves with inserts. Hi Simon, hi Ruth. Love to see it. OBS is being really weird. Might need an update, but yeah. So I think Ukraine are being fastballed into this peace agreement by this, allegedly written by Trump, but I don't think it is. I think these were written by Russia more so than anything. Because I think these are the things that Russia really wants. US Department of Homeland Twitter account is run from Tel Aviv. Yeah, I saw a lot of guys are like Indian and stuff like that. A lot of these like accounts with an avatars and stuff are actually dudes from India, which is like super weird. But the US Home Department security Twitter being run from Tel Aviv is quite interesting. But let's look at the plan, and then we'll go from here. There's a couple other bits I want to discuss. So, Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. What that means, I don't know, because Ukraine's already a sovereign state. So, do they mean the land borders of Ukraine? It doesn't really make sense. A comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. All ambiguities of the last 30 years will be considered settled. So, I think that means like any kind of squabbles will be like squashed. It is expected that Russia will not invade neighbouring countries and NATO will not expand further. So essentially Putin is getting what he wants, which is no further NATO expansion, not even eastward, just in general. A dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States, which is a bit weird to have the United States as a mediator, given the fact that the United States is a part of NATO. It'd make more sense to have like Qatar or someone. To resolve all security issues and create conditions for de-escalation in order to ensure global security and increase opportunities for cooperation and economic development. Ukraine will receive reliable securities. Now, the issue I've got with this is Ukraine already was supposed to have reliable security guarantees when they gave up their nuclear weapons, and this is why, as much as I like Zach Polanski, no country's going to give up their nuclear weapons because it's the ultimate deterrent. It's the shoot us and we'll wipe you out too. So there's that. So the US and NATO allies would treat an attack on Ukraine as an attack on the entire transatlantic community. So effectively, if anyone, specifically Russia, attacked Ukraine, everyone would jump in and attack Russia. That's what, in theory, is being implied there. The size of the Ukrainian armed forces will be limited to 600,000 personnel. So at the moment, they're about 800 to 850,000 personnel. So you're talking about a cut, but according to this, their army was only 250,000 anyways. Most of this will be just conscripts then. So this demobilization point isn't that important. You know, being able to fund a military of 600,000 people for Ukraine would have been really expensive anyways. Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future, which means that neither side can really allow this to happen, which is fine. Which is not fine really, because it should be up to NATO who it admits in, and it should be up to a country who wants to join NATO to be allowed to. NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. Now, this is a big problem. Because are you talking about NATO-specific troops, which I think we have, or are you talking about troops that from countries that have NATO membership? Because it's very hard to attack. It's harder to attack a country rather than defend it. So if there's already NATO troops stationed there, it'd be much easier for them to defend parts of Ukraine rather than go in there and be expected to retake it, especially when the political will might not exist. So this one here is a bit sus. This one. European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland, which is fine, that's neighbouring Ukraine, but it's on the far side of Ukraine. The US guarantee, the US will receive compensation for the guarantee, which is interesting because the US has only done is profited from this war, really. If Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose the guarantee, so fat chance of that happening, unless it's like a false flag. If Russia invades Ukraine, in addition to a decisive, coordinated military response, all global sanctions will be reinstated, recognition of the new territory and all other benefits of this deal will be revoked. So effectively, Russia would lose claim to all of the territories it has kind of taken over by agreement in this. But also, they want the lowering of sanctions. So I think Putin realizes the Russian economy is cooked. And so that's why this gambit exists. I think he's happy with what he's got so far, and he wants the war to come to an end. Which is what I've been saying for a while. I think that this is what he wants. He wants an agreement that will keep what he has so far. Especially if you follow William Spaniel, Mr. Lines on Maps, as well. I think it makes sense. Ukraine is eligible for EU membership and will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while this issue is being considered. Now, I think Ukraine already has some preferential access to the EU market, but the issue is that Ukraine is not eligible for EU membership. I don't think it's even close. They had a recent corruption scandal here. See here, the draft Witskov-Dimitrov plan emerged as Russia claimed small territorial gains in eastern Ukraine, and Zelensky faced a domestic crisis, implicating top officials in a £76 million corruption scandal. In the nightly address, the Ukrainian leader said the US officials had presented its proposals, the points of a plan to end the war, their vision, which is important. He says their vision. He didn't say our vision. So, I can't imagine I see a world where Ukraine would be allowed to get EU membership unless they try and do what they did for Greece, where they overlook a load of things. So, yeah, I'm not super confident. I'm not super confident in that. A powerful global package of measures to rebuild Ukraine, including but not limited to the creation of a Ukraine Development Fund to invest in fast-growing industries, including technology, data centers, and AI. So the only thing that's going to benefit is American companies that create these things like data centers and artificial intelligence. So this is effectively just a bung to American companies. The United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, and modernize and operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities, because some of these facilities would have been destroyed in the war. Joint efforts to rehabilitate war-affected areas for the restoration, reconstruction, and modernization of cities and residential areas. So this will be, again, American companies potentially making a lot of money from this, because they'll be the ones probably supplying all of the materials, or a lot of the materials and the staff to get this stuff done. Infrastructure development, which is fine. Extraction of minerals and natural resources, which is what the Americans want as well. They had certain deals in place, so they could extract the mineral wealth from Ukraine. The World Bank will develop a special financing package to accelerate these efforts. So again, more potential debt for Ukraine. Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. The lifting of sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon in stages and on a case-by-case basis, so that should be interesting. It might be the case they lift all of the non-military sanctions. The United States will enter into a long-term economic cooperation agreement for mutual development in the areas of energy, natural resources, infrastructure, AI, data centers, rare earth metal extraction projects in the Arctic, and other mutually beneficial corporate opportunities. So it doesn't say if they'll go into an agreement with Ukraine or an agreement into Russia with Russia, and Russia will be invited to rejoin the G8. So Russia was kicked out of the G8, I think, after they invaded Ukraine. So this very much looks like Russia want to be reintegrated not just into the economics of the global economy, but also into global politics as well, because the G8 was a massive thing where you get these countries together and they can discuss certain topics on a very, not a small scale, but a very limited scale, in terms of there's not a ton of member states there. It's very much just a few, just a few countries and the EU. So the G7 is quite important in that respect. 100 billion in frozen assets, Russian assets, will be invested in US-led efforts to build and invest in Ukraine. So that's good, because those frozen assets, nothing has been done with them for a while. The US, can you guys hear me? Okay, so I'm just kind of talking off what's going on here, but yeah. The US will receive 50% of the profits from this venture. So again, this is another bung to America. Europe will add 100 billion to increase the amount of investment available for Ukraine's reconstruction. So Americans effectively profiting off of European investments. A bit weird. Frozen European funds will be unfrozen. So this would be the ones that are frozen in Russian like stocks and stuff like that, or Russian stock markets or whatever. The banks. We can hear you, but the internet's been dropping out now and again. Oh fucking hell! It's saying it's fine on my end. That's what's frustrating. But then again, I'm not looking. No, I've not got any warnings about it. I'll have to look at that boost then, or look at other solutions soon. It's really weird. Joint American-Russian workshop on security issues will be established to promote and ensure compliance with all provisions of this agreement, which is fine. That's not much that important. Russia will enshrine in law its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine, which is nonsense because they've always had an aggressive policy against Europe. The United States and Russia will agree to extend the validity of treaties on the non-proliferation and I said that word right, and control of nuclear weapons, including START 1 treaty. I think that was to do with long-range missiles. The BRICS will enjoy having a few states in the G8. Yeah, they'll have one, I think. Ukraine agrees to be a non-nuclear state in accordance with the Treaty of Non. This is bullshit. This point here is bullshit. That's bullshit. Not allowing them to have a nuclear weapon is bullshit. Zaporizhia nuclear power plant will be launched under the supervision of the IAEA. So this is good. And the electricity produced there will be distributed equally between Russia and Ukraine 50-50. So it's free nuclear power for the Russians, effectively. Both countries undertake to implement educational programs in school, society, aimed at promoting understanding and tolerance of different cultures and eliminating racism and prejudice. So the whole premise, part of the premise of this war was to free ethnic Russians, and I think Russian speakers, from the evil grips of the Ukrainians. Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and protection of linguistic minorities. That's quite interesting. Both countries will agree to abolish all discriminatory measures and guarantee the rights of Ukrainian and Russian media and education. So this looks like it's based on what they're saying here, based off of Trump's peace plan for Israel and Gaza, or Palestine. But I think the thing is, it's very much based around you keeping the territory you've already taken, which benefits the aggressor. All Nazi ideology and activities must be rejected and prohibited, which that is very important. And then we've got, this is the important stuff, more of the important stuff, really. So Crimea, Luhansk, Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States. So basically, everyone's going to agree that the territory these territories will be classed as Russian. Kherson and Zaporizhia will be frozen along the lines of contact, which will mean a de facto recognition along the lines of contact. So I think the lines of contact means the battle lines, so whatever's been held by either side. So the contested areas, I think. So this map shit, but I couldn't find anything else really. Oh, it does not help. So I think it's among the contested areas down these bits. That's my reading of that. Russia will relinquish all other territories it controls outside of the 5 regions, but these are the 5 important regions, anyways. So they're going to give up. Like, if we look at the ones that I mentioned, Crimea, Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. So are they going to give up Mariupol? You got Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia here, Kherson 1, 2, 3, 4. So clearly my geography is not great, but it does look a bit weird. Ukrainian forces will withdraw from parts of the Donetsk Oblast, which they currently control, and that will become a demilitarized buffer zone. So this is quite an interesting one. This idea here, demilitarized area, internationally recognized as territory belonging to the Russian Federation, Russian forces will not enter this demilitarized zone. After agreeing on future territorial arrangements, both the Russian Federation and Ukraine will not change these arrangements by force. Any security guarantees will not apply in the event of a breach of this commitment, so either side breaks it, all bets are off. Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using the Dnieper River for commercial activities, and agreements will be reached on the free transport of grain across the Black Sea, which they already had an agreement for the grain, but then Russia binned it. A humanitarian committee will establish to resolve outstanding issues. All remaining prisoners and bodies will be exchanged on an all-for-all basis. That's really important. That's good. All civilian detainees and hostages will be returned, including children, which is also good because Russia have kidnapped a load of Ukrainian children. A family reunification program will be implemented. Measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering of the victims of the conflict. Which, again, all of these points are good. There's one in here I didn't like, which I don't know if we've covered already, but I'll mention it anyways. Ukraine will hold an election within 100 days. So essentially, they want to get rid of Zelensky, but and I wonder if any political parties will run against these peace agreements as well. All parties involved in this conflict will receive, this is the point, will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims or consider complaints in the future. So there will be nothing on any kind of war crimes or anything like that. They're basically saying, like, we're going to draw a line under the sand for any kind of criminal activity here, which I think is wrong. This agreement will be legally binding, its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by Peace Council headed by Donald J. Trump. Sanctions will be imposed for violations. Once all parties agree to this memorandum, the ceasefire will take effect immediately after both sides retreat to agreed points and to begin implementation of the agreement. Now, I've got a feeling, a strong one, that Ukraine's going to be forced into agreeing this. Ukraine are going to be forced into agreeing this because the Americans say, "Cool, we'll cut you off. We'll cut you off, and you'll have nothing." But what this agreement tells me is that, you know, Putin's content with the areas he's taken. So in these areas, they'll give back Sumy and Kharkiv, potentially, which they haven't taken a lot of, I don't think. But yeah, I've got a feeling that he's done with the war. He's going to cut his losses, or I say cut his losses, but he's won. He's won all of this territory here, which is quite a significant amount, I think. All of this. All this Luhansk, Donetsk, Mariupol, Melitopol, Kherson, Sevastopol. So Crimea will officially be theirs. He's got what he wanted, which is the warm water ports down here, and he's got a land bridge as well, which is the other thing he wanted. He wanted, because I think this is where that really weird bridge is that cuts across. But he's got the land bridge he wants to Crimea as well, which is the real prize of what he wanted in the first place. So he's taken a lot of land here, and there'll be a lot more people to add to the Russian Federation as well, which is the other thing he wants. So this is what von der Leyen had to say about it. Oops.
Ukraine has been at the heart of many discussions over the past days. Any credible and sustainable peace plan should first and foremost stop the killing and end the war while not sowing the seeds for future conflict. We have agreed on the main elements necessary for a just and lasting peace and Ukraine's sovereignty. And let me highlight 3 of them. First, borders cannot be changed by force. Second, as a sovereign nation, there cannot be limitations on Ukraine's armed forces that would leave the country vulnerable.
I think this is all the stuff we've covered, so I don't think she's mentioning anything new.
Elements necessary for a just and lasting.
So, yeah, I don't think there's anything important in
What is
this.
important is that we move forward as partners on a single track. And I want to end on a point that is personally important to me. A crucial element that must be...
Let's leave this. This is not important. But yeah, I don't know if you guys got any final thoughts on this peace agreement. I think there's going to be a lot of internal problems for Zelensky to deal with, like this corruption scandal here. How Viper Scott. There's a lot for them to discuss here. I think a full audit. I think we're going to see. I think this might be the end next year. Might be the end of this conflict, which has gone on for about four years. I mean, it's longer. You know, really, it counts from Crimea, so it'd be 12. About the 12-year mark, but you know, this current wave of the conflict, I think it's going to end next year. Sorry guys, I know you yawn a lot. It's not because I'm bored. I'm just tired, I think. But yeah, I don't know. You guys got any final thoughts on the agreement? What was mentioned here? I mean, this was the agreement. I think that was always going to happen. You know, Russia would hold on to what it's got because Russia is not necessarily winning, but it's holding. So Ukraine weren't able to really push Russia back in any areas. So what it leads to is just a massive stalemate. So it makes sense that Russia would want an end to this because, you know, they're going to have to constantly fund, you know, send money for the war effort. And that hurts them domestically, especially when they're running out of people to keep throwing into the meat grinder as well. So it makes sense from a Russian perspective, this peace agreement. They're losing too much territory, but it's unavoidable. I think, yeah. I think what this has done is, it's really pushed to a lot of countries the importance of defense and being able to defend your own nation as well, because it's not Ukraine's fault. They were fighting a much more powerful nation. There was not much they could have done really in this situation, especially when there were guarantees in place for them to actually get help, which they didn't receive. I'll never stick. The EU have rejected. Have the EU already rejected the peace agreement? Am I behind on the times? Oh, so they have, yeah. It happened yesterday, actually, so I missed it. Must not have seen this at all. Yeah, here's Politico on this one. Oh, it's my bad, guys. Europe to Trump. Your Ukraine peace plan is no peace plan at all. Europe's top diplomat told the US presidential team their blueprint for a ceasefire will fail without the support from both Kyiv and European governments. They are now the biggest donors to Ukraine's war effort, and we are still buying a lot of stuff from the Americans as well. So if Trump wanted to, he could cut us off, but I don't think he would. Under the peace agreement, told European ministers at a private meeting in Brussels, obviously the Russians had dictated the terms of the proposal. 100%, I believe this. The bottom line is that any peace agreement is not doable if it's based on appeasement of the aggression, he said. Okay, I missed this completely. I didn't realise they had rejected it. So thanks for that. That's good to know. That's quite good to know. But yeah. So I don't know where we go from here then, because this is all moving quite fast. They've got a G20 meeting, I think. So there's some sort of G20 summit going on, so we have to wait and see. But yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that. We'll move over to Shabana Mahmood, who took a bit of a beating in this podcast clip here.
Racist bullying.
She's saying, okay, there's racial hatred on our streets, that every person of colour is feeling it. We agree. We have noticed that. We have felt that personally, and we've heard from plenty.
So this is from Pod Save the UK. I might have seen one of the hosts on Twitter, but the other one, Nish Kumar, he was on something called the MASH Report, which was like a BBC satire program.
Of others who have felt the same way. God knows our inbox is full about it as well. And so she's like, okay, well, I need to tackle the asylum system. Are you joking, love? Do you actually believe that a racist knows the difference between a person of colour and asylum seeker or a legal migrant? They don't know the difference. Be real.
These are people who can't tell the difference between Muslims and Sikhs, so...
This is ridiculous. You're focusing on asylum seekers because you can focus on it, because you don't want to talk about the need of migrants that we have in this country, many of whom are here to work and for education, and our sectors depend on it, and that's too uncomfortable, and that would hurt our GDP or whatever. So we don't want to talk about that. So we're just going to hit the most vulnerable people we possibly can.
In the background, a lot of NATO partners have stopped sharing intel with the US now because of the Russian money connection. That's interesting.
The language of moral mission. Just stop it. Like, it's one thing to say the Labour Party will die unless I do this. Okay, I don't like that, but at least we can engage in the truth and have a discussion about it. This moral mission business really winds me up. She did, and I'm going to stop ranting about it, but she did an interview.
Yeah, when you argue stuff is the moral thing to do, it sounds like it's the right thing, as in it's justifiable.
Over the weekend, where she talked about, well, my parents came here legally, and that really irks me when people say that, when British people of colour say that. You know, my parents came here legally, your parents came here legally, but they faced a completely different world. I mean, the legal barriers were not quite the same. They were asked to come to fill jobs.
Yeah, that's right. They were asked to come to fill jobs.
I mean, I don't mean people were nice; they weren't nice.
The level of
this again, I agree with. You can't claim, oh, my parents came here legally and therefore it's all okay. Like, you don't know what, people. You can't be judged. You can't judge people on their parents' decisions for a start. If someone comes here by regular means, and their kid grows up in the UK, so they're in a safe country, they've done the right thing for their kid. Instead of growing up in a war zone, somewhere they can get lynched for being who they are, they've put them in a country which is much better for them.
Conversation on this issue is sort of staggeringly lacking in intellectual rigor. So we are talking about a bunch of different things in one go.
Yes, exactly.
We're always talking about immigration and asylum as if the two things are interchangeable, but they're legally quite different frameworks. And
this is something that pisses me off quite a lot and try and push back on, especially when they constantly talk about illegal immigration when they mean asylum seekers.
There are lots of people of colour in this country that are here because they were invited by the government. That is migration and immigration. Yeah. There are also a huge number of South Asians here who came as refugees because they were removed from Uganda in 1973, not as economic migrants, not as immigrants. So it's a really complicated conversation.
I guess I just mean I don't like it, this kind of implied we're better than you because my parents came here legally. I find that grotesque. And yes, I'll be honest, I expect more from a person of colour, and I expect more from a person of colour who's in the Labour Party. I mean, this policies that she's trying to enact, I mean, Suella Braverman could never. Do you know what I mean? And we sat here on this couch so many times talking about how...
I don't know, man. I think given that each Home Secretary we've had, apart from Cooper, has been more radical than the last, Priti Patel passed the bill that would exclude... certain people from the human rights. It was the Human Rights Modern Slavery Act, and then you had what's her face, Braverman talking about using Ascension Island and other places more and ratcheting things up a bit. Each one we've had, apart from Cooper, has been more radical than the last. And the other problem is they've all been people of colour. Patel, Suella Braverman, and then you had Shabana Mahmood, who are all trying to be We're all trying to be one of the good ones, which is not. It's just not going to wash.
Suella Braverman weaponizes her ethnicity
Yeah.
to push a racist agenda. I'm speechless at this. But let's also put our emotions aside for a second and ask, would the proposals even work? So the Home Office has briefed widely that this is modelled on Denmark's immigration system, a country which has spent the past decade turning itself into one of Europe's toughest destinations for refugees. It's the only country to have removed refugee protection on a large scale and the first to refocus its laws away from integration and toward return.
What is also crazy is the fact that people still apply for refuge in Denmark, despite all of this.
Yeah, it's an interesting point of comparison politically as well, because the party that's done this is Denmark's centre-left party, and their hardline zero asylum seekers approach has reduced successful asylum claims to a 40-year low. But critics of this policy say it's come at a cost. The professor of global studies at Roskilde University in Denmark, Michelle Pace, has warned that these measures may reduce asylum numbers, but they come at a human and legal cost. Families are left in uncertainty, long-term planning is impossible, and life in departure centres can be harsh and destabilising.
And crucially, it hasn't put the immigration debate to bed. In fact, it's only become worse. The far-right Danish People's Party, which is not in government but has an increase in support, is now calling for remigration. So that's the mass deportation of people with immigrant backgrounds living.
And remigration is a thing that's popping up more in the UK. A lot more people are discussing it on on Twitter and things like that. And I think what will happen is parties like Reform potentially will push the remigration angle, because they keep pushing the Overton window more and more to the right. Something that Tommy Robinson celebrated recently, that the Overton window keeps shifting.
In Denmark.
And the centre-left political party have now lost control of Copenhagen for the first time in the city's electoral history. And among the reasons cited by analysts are fatigue and frustration with the Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen's rightward turn, including hardline policies on issues like integration and immigration.
It's because they haven't dealt with housing. They haven't dealt with the basic day-to-day issues. All they said is we're going to blame refugees and stuff, and then they've not actually dealt with the issues that people had in the first place. Just like Reform will vote. If you vote for Reform, yeah, they're going to deport loads of asylum seekers. Heck, they might try and deport some people who are here legally. All that's going to happen is big companies are going to buy up any houses that people vacate, and you're going to be stuck in the rental sector still. That's all that's going to happen.
It has had a negative consequence because, again, we see this time and time again. There's a lot of studies that are done by various political think tanks and universities that centre-left parties attempting to ape the rhetoric and policies of the hard right emboldens the hard right and actually splinters the centre-left electoral coalition. So let's look at what the fallout has been for the Labour Party this week in terms of its own electoral coalition. It won't be a shock to you that this has not gone down with refugee charities and backbench Labour MPs. So in a Guardian op-ed on Sunday, which is, again, because it's in the Guardian, we have to assume is aimed squarely at that progressive audience, Mahmood wrote, "Dark forces are stirring up anger in this country and seeking to turn that anger into hate. We must take the opportunity to stop that from happening."
Which is a good point. That it's the medium they have used as well. When normally Rachel Reeves is briefing, the Telegraph and the Times, she's aiming at maybe more people that are fiscally conservative or just generally just centre right / right wingers.
Spectator, New Statesman, and Labour.
It might be also a way to try and cull criticism from certain papers as well by giving them these op-eds.
Have all been totting up the number of Labour backbenchers who have come out publicly against these reforms. At the time of recording, the count was 21, and according to The Guardian, at least one was on resignation watch.
Just to look at the politics of this for a second, we've seen backbench frustration over winter fuel payments and welfare cuts lead to government U-turns. I think it's an interesting question to pose whether rebellious MPs are going to turn the government's hand again.
Tony Vaughan, MP for Folkestone and Hythe in Kent, which is where many boats carrying refugees, that's when they first arrive. Vaughan is also co-chair of the Refugees APPG. He said that the proposal risks creating a kind of perpetual limbo and alienation, which doesn't help refugees and it doesn't help society. Imagine you come as a refugee and you cannot become a citizen for 20 years.
Yeah.
So the idea is they wouldn't come here at all. They would go somewhere else. But this is not. I don't think that's going to work.
Outrageous! It's so. What, you have family here, you work here. I'm actually blown away that I'm reading this out from a Labour Party.
It gets worse as well, because if the war ends, say for example, right, if this peace plan, the Ukrainian peace plan, is enacted, right, the Labour government would, under their own proposals, deport loads of Ukrainian people and say, look, war's done, bye bye. And what if they lived in Kherson, for example? What if they lived in one of these occupied areas that we discussed earlier? What if you're from Luhansk or Donetsk or wherever area that is? You wouldn't even return to Ukraine. Your home is in Russia at that point.
So the move has delighted Tommy Robinson, which we talked about briefly earlier, who tweeted, "The Overton window has been obliterated. Well done, patriot."
This is what I'm talking about. This is all about shifting the Overton window.
Farage has put out a statement saying the Home Secretary sounds like a Reform supporter, and Reform MP Danny Kruger has invited Mahmood to join the party, to which she responded, "Over my dead body." The thing that I think is worth discussing from the sort of politics side of this, obviously we are a wealthy nation.
Yes.
There is global chaos. That chaos is only going to increase as the climate crisis intensifies. So we are going to see mass patterns of migration. It is incumbent on...
Ukraine will become a safe country again, and refugees from there will be sent back. Yeah, that's my point.
Wealthier nations to take some responsibility, particularly because in the case of climate refugees, we are the countries that are largely responsible for the pollution that's driving a lot of this stuff. So there's a moral side of it. There is also just a personal side of it for us as people that, whose families did come to this country, who have a kind of, probably like a particular sensitivity on this issue. But I also think if I take both of those things out, we always end up saying this stuff. If you take the moral and questions of basic decency out of this conversation, let's just park both of those things for a second. I don't know when people are going to realise the problem in this country and the problem of many of the countries is inequality. That is the biggest problem facing our societies. On paper, when you elect a Labour government, what you expect it to do is keep the focus on class-based politics, and you expect it to keep a focus on reducing economic inequality. That's the bare minimum that we should expect from a political party that emerges out of the trade union movement in the early part of the 20th century. However, this Labour government has simply turned to the playbook that's been written for them by the past decade and a half of Conservative governments, which is keep the focus on immigration, keep talking about immigration.
Keep focus on social issues.
You can deport all of us, please. Just keep trying it. Keep deporting, get rid of the asylum seekers, get rid of the refugees, change people's indefinite leave to remain, get rid of me, get rid of Coco, get rid of all the fucking packies and whoever.
Yo, whoa. All right, just relax, bro. Relax.
You want. It's not going to solve your problem.
True.
That is not going to solve your problem. Your lives are not going to be made better by deportation. You can keep deporting us and deporting us and deporting us, and I'm telling you, it is not going to deal with the underlying problems that affect the majority of people in this country, which are the result of grotesque economic inequality. We keep saying it over and over again, and the only reason we keep saying it over and over again is no political party at the moment in frontline British politics that has had its hands on the wheel of the government has been willing to actually address the problem that afflicts us as a society.
GDP would have fell without immigration over the last decade.
And giving ground to racists and giving ground to the people that hate us is not going to deal with that problem. This is a bottomless pit of hate that you are attempting to paper over, and it's never going to work. The people that thought Shabana Mahmood were a fucking packy this morning think she's a fucking packy tonight.
Facts. 100%. This is what I mean. Like, you'll never be one of the good ones. All you're going to be is their jester for a bit. They'll humour you for a while, and they'll look to get rid of you as well. Once they start pushing the conversation to remigration, who do you think they're going to get rid of? You. Absolute donut. I'm honestly so... there's a genre of person who is so desperate to be in the in crowd, so desperate to be accepted. Racists will never accept her. And the fact is, her seat is in Birmingham, right? There's no way she's going to win. There's no way she's going to keep her seat. It's not going to happen.
Nothing she has done has shifted that dialogue at all.
Absolutely. And I think if I'm trying to, again, put the moral element aside, put my emotions aside, it's my understanding that the Labour Party believe that they have no chance of winning the next election unless they tackle this. So for them, they're feeling like this is an existential threat.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why they're doing it. I mean, everything we've said before, you're not going to win those voters over. And meanwhile, you've abandoned your entire core base that looks to you for some sense of morality, maybe not perfection, but some sense of decency. I honestly believe...
We don't ask for the world. When people say we ask for too much or whatever, right? not asking for the world here. Like, there's stuff that the government can do, even with limited finances, which they're not doing. Instead, they're focusing on social issues like this.
Believe that it is self-immolation. I would be very interested to see if I'm wrong. Certainly the comments online seem to suggest that there's a section of the public that actually likes this tactic of the Labour Party. We shall see. I mean, if there was a threat posed by the Green Party before, it's definitely a big threat now.
Look, let's move on before I have a rage stroke.
They did discuss the stuff in your party, but I don't think there's like a ton to discuss here.
Trans rights, but he's not the only member of the Independent Alliance with frustrations.
I think the problem with your party again is, like, without a conference, without a constitution, without any idea of what your party actually is, like this idea that it's a socialist party was decided by who? Because if the whole point is the members are meant to decide everything, the members haven't decided anything, which is my point. They're under the political bus she aspires to be. Honestly, yeah, if she runs in that seat again, let me see which seat she's in. I'll show you now, because they'll probably run someone against her. Constituency. She's Birmingham Ladywood, right? So let's have a look. Birmingham. Oops, can't spell. Birmingham, which already has its problems with the bins, by the way. Birmingham. Election result. See how she did last time. She probably did quite well. Yeah, she did pretty well. Do you know what, actually? Let's see. Do you know what, she actually didn't do that well. She actually didn't. So when you look at this, right, they had the Your Party guy. He got 12,000 votes, so he won over a third of the vote. She won 40%. I can see a world where she loses her seat. You know, I can see it. So you can see Conservative vote fell. The Lib Dem vote went up a little bit. Reform Party, yeah. But when you look at this, right, this guy Ahmed Yaqub, who I don't know much about, but I think because there was a couple of the Workers' Party, the worker parties, whatever it's called, they were quite dodgy. I can't remember if anything was said much about Ahmed Yaqub, but she could lose her seat, guys. You know that. She could actually lose her seat unless they move her to a different area, which would be interesting. She could lose. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because they're basing it all off these guys, right? The Social Democrats, and within the same week of them announcing it, this party, the Social Democrats, start losing votes, start losing shares and things like that. Now this is their municipal elections, which I'm assuming is their equivalent of the local elections. But Mette Frederiksen, I think that's how you pronounce her name, has admitted that a fall in support for the Social Democrats was greater than we had expected. After her party suffered sweeping defeats across Denmark for the first time in more than 100 years, they lost control of Copenhagen. So they're not doing that well. And I don't know if it mentions it in this article, but it was in another one. No, they didn't mention this one, but they were talking about the lack of housing and things like that. And when you've got a party, if you're racist, and say you back this party because you're racist and you want to kick it to refugees, right? Now you've got more far right parties offering you remigration. So if you're racist, you know who you're going to vote for, and if you want good social policies, you know who you're going to vote for. It's not this lot. It's not. And so they're going to get killed under this system. It's not going to go well for them at all. So there's that. You got Zach Polanski is tempted to challenge Starmer in his seat, which should be very interesting.
And things have been going pretty well for you since you took over as leader, and you've suggested that
he also favoured one of my tweets today. So big up Zach, I guess. I'll show you guys. Where is it? Is it here? Yeah, it goes. People who backed austerity shouldn't talk about economics. That's my jab at David Gork because he took a jab at Polanski.
And things have been going pretty well for you since you took over as leader, and you've suggested that you'll stand as an MP in London. One poll showed that you could actually take the Holborn and St Pancras seat, which just happens to be the Prime Minister's constituency. Do you fancy taking him on?
It'd be very tempting to take Keir Starmer down, but actually,
you should do it.
What I'm doing right now is really focusing on right across England and Wales, growing the Green Party. We've just hit 175,000 members.
But you are tempted
because I think a lot of people might vote for him to get rid of Starmer just for the memes. just for the banter of it. It'd be crazy. That would be the first time, I think, in British history that could happen. I remember we discussed it in A-level politics in sixth form, that, you know, what if the leader of the party loses their seat? And what the conclusion we came to was that you would kind of lean on one of the older MPs to basically resign, and you'd try and win in their seat. But again, it could happen to you again. You'd have to need an absolute guaranteed seat to win, which would only exist in, like, nowhere, really. Maybe Wales would have been potential, but no, Wales has been... I think Labour nearly lost... No, Labour did lose to Plaid Cymru in Wales, so there's no guarantee, there's no lock for Labour.
To take him on, that's what you said.
I mean, I'm tempted to take on any Labour MP that's a disaster and ultimately replace them with a better MP who will stand for people and planet rather than vested interests.
Yeah, this would be hilarious. Honestly, if he did this, I'd actually become a member of the Green Party, 100%. I'm not affiliated with any political party, but if he did this for the memes, right, I'd back this 100%. Can you also talk about economics?
And can I say one other thing on that, though, on the asset
Well, I want to ask you...
A household economy is nothing like a national budget.
What? Someone tell Rachel Reeves. What? I didn't know that. You know, Rachel Reeves talking about how her mum taught her the importance of balancing the books by the, at the kitchen table when they were discussing bills. What? The household is not the same as the national budget. Did anyone know this? Did anyone know this? Did you know?
And we really need to break that metaphor.
And of course, it is not the same thing, but
What?
people look at the government in terms of what they borrow and what they spend and how they raise money through
But we
our
need to break that
taxation.
metaphor because it's a completely different way of looking at the economy.
But
which
I
is-
just...
Wow, he's a genius. No one knew that. I thought it was the same thing. But yeah, and discussing the rivals.
Can I pick up on the lessons learned?
What about the national credit card? Yeah, we maxed out the credit cards. That's what she said.
Quickly, so otherwise I'm not going to fit in another
The
question.
gentleman made a really good point about the vaccine. Absolutely, the speed of that being a great success. And the lesson that we've got to learn for the future is that we've got to continue to invest in that kind of research so that going forward, we are even more prepared for whatever it might be.
All right.
Which is true, because we've got a world-class university in Oxford. That really helped the British one, even though it wasn't as good as the other ones.
Nigel Farage has platformed people who have questioned the vaccines, who have undermined that kind of research. That's a lesson we've got to learn for the future. We have to keep the likes of Farage away from this going forward. Otherwise, more people's lives could be at risk.
Facts.
All right. I'm sure if Reform were on the panel, they would defend themselves. They're not here to do so, but we hear what you say. Okay.
We heard what the guy said.
Well-
he said that the royal family was potentially had cancer because they'd taken a COVID.
No, I get that. And
He was a-
as you
he was
know,
a
Reform
keynote speaker at
he was a
Reform's
keynote
conference.
speaker. They have distanced themselves from him subsequently.
Yeah, on the rare occasion they aren't on the panel, Reform are still defended, which is true. So we saw that firsthand. Moving on a little bit to Goodall cooking the Tories.
Well, it looks pretty clear that
There was another clip where he did some good work,
Rachel Reeves this week will freeze income tax thresholds. That's clearly going to be a centre of political conflagration for the week. Your leader, Kevin Badenocker, says that Reeves should apologise if she does it. Would you therefore like to apologise for doing it from 2021 to 2028?
So the distinction between those two situations is that Rachel Reeves has made countless promises that she would not do that. It would breach her manifesto commitments.
Well,
if
you
she were
always
to do
pledged
that.
to keep tax down, and you kept that. Was a huge tax grab.
We're talking specifically here about the Rachel Reeves situation, which is one of a breach of the manifesto commitment, if that is what she does, and it does seem highly likely, I agree. And I think under those circumstances, not only should she apologise, I think she should consider her position, actually. But look, during the run-up to the general election...
This comes from the party that broke many manifesto pledges.
They said they wouldn't be putting up taxes left, right and centre. They had about £7 billion worth of tax increases in the manifesto. They came forward with £30 billion worth.
Well, you said in 2019 you would keep tax down.
£40 billion worth of tax increases.
Well, you said in 2019 you keep tax down. You're criticising Rachel Reeves for sticking, in the main, to the tax freezes, to the freezes in income tax thresholds that you yourself committed to until 2028. Do you know how much that represented in terms of a tax increase in those years?
It's an effective tax increase when you keep the bands the same.
3 billion, 1.4% of GDP,
but
you
Lewis,
increase by freezing tax thresholds. The thing that you are now criticising Rachel Reeves for simply extending probably by a couple of years.
But these are two very different situations.
Why?
Because after 2019, we had something called COVID that shrank the UK economy
and she's still dealing with the after effects.
That shrank the UK economy by...
Yeah, I think this isn't the best argument from Goodall here, but I get what he's trying to do, which is he's trying to conflate the two things. But I think the Conservatives didn't have much of a choice, I think, at that point, to increase stuff. Want to discuss David Gill a little bit?
Actually, what the Brexit Party is doing is very different to what the establishment parties have done, and it works on the basis of support coming from the grassroots up and small donations to become a registered supporter. Now, those transactions, let me explain all.
It was so easy, right, to fake a membership for the Reform Party. You could sign up as a turtle.
All of it to you, because then we can put this to bed. Those transactions are coming through PayPal. Now, in PayPal and the system we have set up, you can only receive those transactions in sterling. You could possibly make them in other currencies, but those transactions are all under £500, which do not therefore count as political party donations. Now, these...
So you could make multiple accounts, right, and they could all donate up to £500, and you would be thousands of pounds in.
Guys should know that, and you should know that as having just set something up. Do you want to have a little read, because it's here?
But we don't. But you don't require personal
proper condescending
information, do you, from the donors?
What I would like to say is this: Gordon Brown, like Carol Cadwallader, is setting up a system where they have a narrative they want to create. They want to say that something weird's going on. The Brexit Party's been
Is something weird going on?
No, and actually we've had journalists come in and look at our system.
Which journalists? Who?
And how we're getting our donations. I would invite you to do the same.
I would have took that invite.
And it's sloppy and absurd journalism to say this is the story we want to exist, and now we're going to piece together bits of forensic
bullshit. So, former Welsh Reform leader jailed for pro-Russian bribery. So, the former leader of Reform UK in Wales has been sentenced to 10.5 years in prison after admitting taking bribes for pro-Russian interviews and speeches. So, David Gill from Wales is thought to have received up to £40,000 to help pro-Russian politicians in Ukraine. 40 grand is how cheap politicians are in this country. Can you believe that? 40 G's. That's nothing for a rich person. If you're a multi-millionaire, right, 40k is very cheap. If you're rolling with that kind of dough. He was a member of he was an MEP when he accepted the money, and MEPs got paid quite well. Let me just have a look at MEP salary, because you get expenses covered as well. Don't forget. So you're getting about gross salary of monthly 10k. So he's on 100k, 100,000 euros. So in pounds, in Great British pounds. It's about 9k. So he's on about 90k a month, right? Oh, 90k a year. 90k a year, and he gave it all up for 40k. Like, crazy. How dumb do you need to be to get caught? Very stupid. Honestly, it's not hard not to get caught with this stuff. You know, like certain people on Russia Today, for example. The Met Police said their own investigations are continuing into whether any other individuals have committed offences. Gill is the first politician to be jailed under the Bribery Act, which is crazy. Like, this is the first guy they managed to catch. It applies to UK nationals. It established 4 major offences: actively bribing, passively requesting, or accepting a bribe. So yeah, I can't believe this guy's that much of a donut. He got caught. So there's that. And the question is, you know, like I've seen like different people, like a different bias mention it. It's like, who else was approached? Because why would you approach this? You know, David Gill's not that. He's not a big dog. Surely you approach this man here.
Is that there should be a huge degree of guilt in this House about what provoked all of this in the first place, and we saw Western Ukrainians waving European flags, rioting, setting fire to things, and effectively staging a coup d'etat which brought down the Ukrainian president, which has led to this instability. Yes, you are the guilty people, and you refuse to accept it.
So yeah, this man, absolute stooge. See what notification I've got. So he's saving in relation to that won't happen, so people won't feel it. The government's going to rob taxpayers. This person, absolute donut, yeah. So So we're talking about Reeve setting to freeze the national rail fares, so nobody will feel better off. Now, my argument was this: look, people who travel for work will be better off. People who commute see the costs go up year on year. Every year we see the same story about the costs going up by retail price index, RPI, right? About 4%. The increases go up. This will be the first time this won't happen. So in the news, it's going to be covered. Rail fares are not going to go up, but people's wages are going up, so they will feel the benefit of this. It's only a saving to. She's saying it's only a saving to relation that won't happen, so people won't feel it, but people will feel it. That's the point. So again, this person here, senior political commentator and columnist at the Telegraph, I can see why, because she's a donut. But yeah. I did see this kind of discussion because we're going to be discussing the economy a little bit. Oh my god, bro! Paul Mason, biggest star glazer I've ever seen. Get this man in the bin. Honestly, just embarrassing. But yeah, Rachel Reeves is studiously ignoring the cause of Britain's woes, the Brexit-shaped hole in the roof, and it's not just down to Brexit why our economy is in such a bad state, but it is one of the major factors in it. But yeah, the Lib Dems, oh my god, bro, leave me alone. I'm trying to live stream. Lib Dems to force a vote on creating a new customs union with the EU. So I think the Labour manifesto said no joining the EU's custom union or no joining a customs union. Let me have a look. Customs union. Because the wording is important here. So there'll be no return to the single market, the customs union, or freedom of movement. So it doesn't rule out a customs union, but you'd have to get quite pedantic over there. The rail fares free, so just follow Scottish Government on getting rid of peak fare rates. I would love that, to be honest. That would be what people would want, I think. So this policy here is basically asking Labour to break a manifesto pledge. It's not going to happen. This is Starmer at the G20 discussing growth.
The role of the G20 is critical at this moment. Growth must be a mission for us all to embrace as the means to improve lives, to fund public services, and to...
But it's not the only way to improve people's lives. You can do it through redistribution, for example.
Keep our people secure. The G20 has worked together before to fix fundamental problems in the global economy.
With like tax and stuff like that, tax avoidance.
We need to find ways to play a constructive role again today in the face of the world challenges. And I'd like to see us come together around a 5-point plan for growth that leaves no one behind.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Do you want to discuss the tax rates quickly? So about income taxes might not be out, but threshold freezes extension stays. And this one's important because this is something we mentioned before. With the Mel Stride clip.
After the hokey cokey over the rise in income tax rates,
it is a bit dodgy. Like these media people, they all kind of hire each other. Like there's a senior person at the Guardian getting a job at ITV.
Insiders have told me that we should still...
surely you'd want newer people to do this kind of stuff.
...expect a manifesto breach on tax, just a slightly subtler one. In last year's budget, Rachel Reeves ruled out extending the Tory freeze to income tax thresholds, saying it would hurt working people. Yet this time round, we know that she's planning to do just that.
So the question is that in the manifesto? That's the question. So let's have a look. Tax freeze. Tax freeze threshold. Is that in the manifesto? Because I can't imagine they would put a date on it, but I think I remember seeing something about 27. No, it looks like that point is true. Damn it. Oh, that's according to the Tories though, no one cares about them. So, let's see, they got something on Full Fact, so they're quite good. Rachel Reeves has appeared to link the manifesto commitment to the thresholds in part of her 2024 budget speech, which has been widely quoted in recent dates, including by Badenoch. So, who claimed in a pre-budget press conference that the Chancellor said, in her own words, extending the freeze of thresholds will be a breach of the Labour Party manifesto. So, there's no conclusion here. So there's no conclusion to this full fact article. So as much as I said they do good work, let's say here it is. So Labour's 2024 manifesto said Labour will not increase taxes on working people, which is why we will not increase national insurance and okay, blah, blah, blah. The wording of this pledge has been closely scrutinised and its meaning manipulated or disputed, sorry. So after the government increased employers' national insurance contributions in 24, many argued it breached the manifesto commitment, though Labour claimed it didn't because there wasn't a national insurance increase applied to working people. The commitment on income tax has not been disputed in quite the same way, but the way it is worded is not entirely unambiguous. As for Government Tracker, this pledge clearly rules out increasing income tax rates for working people, but does not explicitly refer to the threshold. So I'm not seeing this being a manifesto breach, and again, like, I don't like the Labour Party, so...
This chart from the IFS shows how when wages rise with inflation, but the thresholds stay the same, more people are dragged into paying the 40p rate.
This is one of the reasons why I wouldn't go for a promotion at work. I wouldn't be in the 40p rate, but any kind of wage increase I get will get hit with about 20% tax. So, like, it's not great.
This started in 2021 and is supposed to end in 2028, but Reeves is planning to extend it for 2 more years. Now, the turquoise line shows that what the higher rate would be, around £62,000, if it had carried on rising in line with inflation. Instead, look at the pink line here. The threshold currently kicks in at just over £50,000, and by the end of the decade, under the Chancellor's plan, this would hit £46,000 in today's prices. This yellow line shows the income of somebody who's just joined the top quarter of all taxpayers. It would come within £1,000 of the higher...
Well, the top 75%, so this is what the top 25% of earners are just on 45k. That can't be right.
...rate. In the early 1990s, less than 4% of the population paid that. Under Reeves's plan, almost a quarter of earners will. Now look at this yellow line. With the tax-free personal allowance also frozen, more people will pay tax, including those who receive the full state pension, the pink line here, creeping up.
Which again is true, like as the, because the rates have stayed the same, the more money you earn, the more money you're paying tax. So say if you're making, I think the threshold's like 12.5. So if you're on, say, 11k and you got a couple of, wage increases because minimum wage has gone up, you're going to start falling into the tax threshold. It won't mean that you're net losing money, but it will mean that you're not gaining as much as you could be if the thresholds were uplifted.
What does that all mean for your monthly payslip? Well, this chart shows how much more tax both basic rate in pink and higher rate taxpayers in green will pay each year. The existing freeze for...
They're all worried about their income, but the thing is, she's not going to be paying more in tax anyway. She's going to be on way more than like 60k. She's like one of the seniors at The Guardian, and she's getting these gigs at ITV, so she ain't going to be paying more in tax. Unless she gets paid out via dividends, which I doubt.
When Reeves entered office, means a small rise at both rates. But look how much tax goes up under the new plan. Those on basic rate will owe over £400 more by 2030, while those on the higher rate will pay over £1,100 more. As you can see, the Chancellor's promise to protect working people is being stretched to its limit.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think because, even if you get these small increases in wages, because the way the thresholds are, it's just not going to work. So I don't think people feel as much the benefit as she thinks they will. I did see Reeves saying she's sick of the mansplaining, which I find pretty hilarious, that she's not very good at her job. You had, I think it's Holden, one of the guys at the Bank of England, saying it's a bad hand played badly. I think I've got the article here. No, I don't have it actually. Let me go find it. I'll bring that one up as well. She writes a lot of op-eds for the Times, Here it is. So yeah, let's look at what Ash has to say about it, and then we'll go into it.
I saw that what they led with was a quote from her saying that she was sick of being mansplained to. And I thought, okay, they've taken this out of context. She must be talking about people who are explicitly disparaging her because of her gender or something, but she wasn't. It was framed as being frustrated with people telling her how to do the job of being Chancellor of the Exchequer. And I just thought that this was such an egregious abuse of the language of feminism. Feminism doesn't mean that people can't criticise you for having a really powerful position and perhaps making bad decisions with it. Feminism means that you're not going to be disparaged on account of your gender. And regardless of whether you're on the left like me, or the centre, or the right, there are plenty of quite legitimate reasons to be annoyed at Rachel Reeves. And I just thought that this was indicative of the slightly bunker mentality that seems to be at the top of the government, which is when people are angry at them for decisions that no one is responsible for but them, they try and find a reason to make it everybody else's fault. I saw that one.
Yeah, I think it's kind of pretty accurate. We'll discuss the article first. So it's not an op-ed by her, it's from Tom Baldwin, who's quoted her. So this is filler. This is also filler. Her sometimes stimulated personality begins to relax. She banters with the boys. This is also filler. Is there anything actually important here? National renewal. She cuts a big red ribbon outside. Has politely lobbied about high tax colleges. Like this will be paying for work. Blah, 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 blah. In one classroom, however, her awkwardness reappears when faced by a dozen teenagers staring at her silently from behind their desks. Do you know who I am? She asked. The student looked down because they don't know. Eventually, a girl is coaxed into describing her coursework, so no one knows who she is. That's her fault. She's got no stage presence. That's on her. She should introduce herself. She shouldn't be like, "Hi kids, do you know who I am?" Obviously not. Eventually, a girl is coaxed into describing her coursework on the history of Britain's political parties. So, which one do I represent? Asked the politician with anxiety. In her voice. Is it Labour? The girl replies. Like this is how much people know her. Like these students, like she was invited to this school. Like it's just ridiculous. Or maybe the kids don't think her policies are very Labour. I don't know. Reeves has never been the swaggering type, so sure of her celebrity. I mean, it's just silly. You introduce yourself. You know, you don't assume people know who you are. I guarantee if Starmer walked into that classroom, they probably wouldn't know who he is either. You know, she kicks herself for asking that question of these young constituents. I suggest that maybe they're reluctant to answer because none of them wanted to be the uncool kid. I don't think that's true. That would have been clearly she would be the uncool kid then. No, there's not much. This is a really long read. Let me see if I can find the actual bit we're looking for. Because the rest of this is filler. There are plenty of some. Let's see. You know, she talks about getting debt down, the cost of living. By the time of the next election, the plan is for sensible, pragmatic change. All these like just random buzzwords and filler. It's ridiculous. There are plenty, including from her own side, who no longer have that much faith in any strategy coming out of number 10 or 11. Reeves has little patience with any armchair generals and critics. I'm sick of people mansplaining how to be Chancellor, she says, with some force. Which is okay. Then be good at your job. Like, are you accusing like one of the former guys at the Bank of England for mansplaining to you what you should be doing and what you're getting wrong? Because he said that as well. Bank. Let me see if I can find him. Bank of England. Reeves. Bad hand. Played badly. You got Andy Haldane. Haldane. I think I'm going to say that's how you pronounce his name. That's what he had to say about it.
The former chief economist.
See if I can find it in the transcripts bit. It'll be easier because I want the audio of this. Is it there? Here it is, look.
It feels like it's a fair time to give an assessment on the Chancellor. How do you think she's done?
Listen, it's been a bad hand played in truth pretty poorly.
Because I saw Phil trying to defend Reeves by saying, like, oh, the only mistake she's making is over her messaging. It's not over the actual policies and things like that. And it's like, bro, you're chatting the maddest shit. When someone says to you, it's a bad hand played badly, it means you made bad decisions consistently. It's not that you've made one mistake. When you play a bad hand, it means you've made a succession of errors.
So mistakes have been made.
Mistakes.
And repeated mistakes. And the worst of that, I would say, is it's repeated mistakes. The black hole narrative that you and I discussed a year ago, sucking all life, all energy and light from the economy, has been a mistake repeated this time as well. So not enough has been done to give growth a chance to create that stability. It's only 16 months since Keir Starmer said, we want to tread more lightly on our lives. That has singly not happened in that space.
So is he mansplaining now? Is that the guy who was working for the Bank of England, not some junior like she was? We're talking about someone who was important, not an intern or anything like that. A guy who was there, a big dog effectively, is saying a bad hand played badly. Are we going to ignore that? Because he's a man. Should we get more female economists to criticise Reeves? Like, what do you want here? But yeah, you can stay in this echo chamber of the Times and things like that, but it's just ridiculous. She says, look, we've made a couple of unforced errors. So, who can criticise the Chancellor in this situation here when she herself is admitting she's made mistakes? They're trying to come up with chess analogies here. An aide arrives and says she's due right now to be on the next meeting, in a meeting next door with the Prime Minister. I've got to go, she says. Keir hates if I'm late, so sounds like she has an issue with being late. The diaries seem closely entwined as their fates, and the budget she announces on Wednesday may determine time is running out for both. So, should we live stream Wednesday? Shall I try and live stream Wednesday for you guys? Let's see. Let's see if we can do a live stream. I'll have a read of the budget and such, but we'll see if we can do something on Wednesday or next week. But this is honestly one of the most ridiculous ridiculous things I've read. And this is actually what she was. This is actually the last thing. This is the last thing. She goes. Despite the fact challenges, this is an op-ed she's written. So she goes, look. Despite the fact that the challenges we face are real, whether it's the deep scars of austerity, a chaotic Brexit, or the shadow of a deadly pandemic, it's not enough to simply criticise the mistakes of the past. To blame the hand you're dealt is a dereliction of duty. It's my job as your Chancellor not to spend my time gazing in the rear-view mirror, but to make the right choices that change our futures for the better. So, they can't keep going around blaming the Conservatives for mistakes that have happened when your own Chancellor is talking about how we need to stop doing that. Crazy statement. A very idiotic statement to make. Because you're basically trying to not absolve the Tories, but you're trying to ignore the mistakes of what's happened in the past rather than learn from them. She says, the choices I've made over the past year and a half have set us on the right path. We've had 5 interest rate cuts since the election. Again, the government doesn't have a lot to do with inflation and interest rate cuts. Not a ton. You had a situation where the Tories were celebrating the fall of the fall of the rate of inflation, and everyone's like, well, you didn't do anything. And they were like, yeah, that's why inflation fell. So it's just ridiculous. Our economy grew faster than any major economy this year because we started at a much worse point. That's how percentage growth works. So again, when the economy doesn't do well next year, what are you going to blame at that point? It's just nuts. Even the inflation calculator we use is a joke. So she's talking about the largest overhaul of asylum policy. So that's more a Home Office thing, but okay. Because we're scrapping police and crime commissioners, saving the taxpayer £100 million a year. That's good, because the crime commissioner thing was a joke. I think it was just there to kind of get people into elected positions and just get paid by taxpayer. I honestly think it was a joke. Shutting down quangos, again, that's good, like NHS England. This is good, because NHS England was kind of pointless. Cracking down on fraud and error in the welfare system, which there isn't a lot of fraud and error in the welfare system anyways. She talks about reform of the welfare system too, and you know what that means? Cuts. From a system that was designed to punish, trapping millions of people on benefits, rather than helping them into work, into a system designed to help people succeed. So again, we're going to have to wait and see what they've got, because they were talking about sending work coaches into hospitals to help people. Don't know how that helps. Because when you're in hospital, you should be focusing on recovery more than anything. However, reform and control on spending aren't alone enough to grip inflation. Not when there's an urgent need. It will require direction by this government to get inflation under control, and at the budget I will set out how it will ease the cost of living for households. So wait and see on that one. The work has already begun. Announcement to freeze rail fares is a historic one, which is good. That I support that. We've frozen prescription costs. Again, Scotland and Wales and I think Northern Ireland don't pay for prescriptions, so I'm not going to give you a lot of credit for that when the other bits of the union get better stuff than what we get. Like, piss off. These choices are only possible because of the stability we have brought back to the economy. With my ironclad commitment to the fiscal rules, which again, I told you guys the fiscal rules would be important, but no, we were told it would be a smokescreen. Do you guys remember that? I need to clip that. I knew that, you don't talk about something like the fiscal rules without it being important consistently. I will maintain fiscal stability and bring down debt, which she's not really doing. I will build the headroom I need so that the country is prepared for increasingly unstable global headwinds, which, again, she didn't leave that much headroom, which means like that much, essentially it's margin for error, if you think about it. She didn't leave like a ton for margin of error. So, yeah, with the ironclad commitment in the fiscal rules. Yeah, I believe a brighter future is possible. A strong Britain, a fairer Britain, a more secure Britain. My budget will keep us on that path. Rachel Reeves, Chancellor of the Exchequer. So, those youths might not know who she is, but we know her all too well, which is a problem because she's boring as hell. But yeah, I think that's concluded the stream. I think we discussed quite a bit, to be honest. We did the Russia-Ukraine stuff, some Shabana Mahmood, Rachel Reeves, a bit on Zach Polanski, and a couple other things. So yeah, hopefully we'll get Zach on the podcast at some point, because I've got questions for the boy, but I don't know if he'll ever turn up because he has answered the questions, but not that well. So we have to wait and see on it. But yeah, anyways, guys, that's it from me. You might see me on Wednesday for the budget. Yeah, it'd be Wednesday because it'd be at PMQs. So yeah, hopefully it's not. The one thing I'll say about Reeves, at least she's not as boring as Jeremy Hunt, because I'll never forgive QA for saying, oh yeah, you're going to cover the budget after this. I was like, oh sure. And then I fell asleep about 3 times. So QA, if you're in the stream still, I'll never forgive you for that. Absolutely heinous activities. Proper villain mentality, that is. I was not happy. I was not happy at all. That was more upsetting than me not being able to go to the Your Party press conference, inaugural conference. But if they do one in my town, I'll go. I'll actually go. But they won't do one where I live because there's nothing here. But yeah, I'll see you guys next week, I guess. Take care.